Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Make Your Mark podcast. Now, I am super excited for our guest today. Why? Because I just had a conversation with him off camera and he's already dropping golden nuggets, right? I had to tell him to save it. And so his name is Dave Albin. He was actually adopted by his aunt and uncle at the age of 5. And he had no idea. He wasn't told until he was 11 years old. And that's when his entire life turned upside down. Dave started drinking and got into drugs. But later on, after a little while, he was introduced to personal development and attended the Tony Robbins event for the very first time and walked on fire. And then all of a sudden, right, I'm not going to give away what's happened because Davey's going to tell us today. But then he started working for Tony Robbins for about a show of 20 years. He was Tony's fire walk captain. Oh my goodness, look at the transition. Dave then retired in 2014 from the Tony Robbins company because he was then hired by Google. What? Insane. And then since Dave has done gigs for NASA, Heineken, the Entrepreneur Organization, Nate Bailey, and many others through his own company called Firewalk Productions. Oh my goodness, Dave, I am super excited to have you on the show. This is so exciting.
Okay, that was a mouthful. Well, so, it's like you said it all. All right, well, thanks for being on your show. I'll see you next time.
No, these were just some of the highlights, right? Because
Understood.
I'm sure there's still other things that's happened, the gaps, I mean, your story is so colorful, like I said earlier, right?
Yeah.
And I've got so many questions for you, but first of all, I've got to ask you, right? We already know some of your journey, okay, from a very young age. But as a young person, right, with that journey, how did you cope with all the changes, the transitions, the knowing that you were actually adopted and your uncle and aunt were not your mom and dad that you thought? And then building this empire that you now have. How does that even happen?
Well, I think certainly everybody involved had good intentions. In other words, when I was born, 2 months before I was born, if we go back a little further, 2 months before I was born, Kay, my biological father had hurt him. He hurt his head. He was a pilot in Korea, and we don't know exactly what happened, but he hurt his head. Well, to save his life, they put a plate in his head. Well, it also took his life because 2 months before I was born, he would complain to my mom all the time that the pain of this plate was excruciating, and he didn't know how much longer he could take it. Well, 2 months before I'm born, he turns to mom and says, "I'm going to the grocery store." Never saw or heard from him again. So we can only assume that he committed suicide. Now, we don't know that for 100%, but for a man just not to show up. So when I was born, my mom, it was a single mom. She already had 2 boys. She was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my grandmother and another cousin. So there were 6 of us living in this 1-bedroom apartment. And so mom was working at the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood, really well-known hotel. She was a server, and she wasn't afraid of hard work. She came out of the Depression. She was that magical, she came out of that group of people, like my parents, I truly believe saved the world, that generation, my parents' generation, because my dad, my father that raised me, he was in Europe fighting the Germans in London, as a matter of fact. My best friend's dad was in Pearl Harbor fighting the Japanese. So while all the men in America were overseas fighting the war, guess what the women were home doing? Everything. Okay, they did. Okay, they did it all. They stepped up. I mean, right? They were building jeeps, tanks, trucks, ammunition. My mother, my biological mother, was known as Rosie the Riveter. And what they meant by that, it was a very, it was a compliment, is she was working for a company called McDonnell Douglas, which was building airplanes for the war. So my point is that my mom was not afraid of hard work. She came out of the Depression, but she was working, double shifts and everything. And by the time I was 5 years old, it wasn't enough. She couldn't feed me. So she did a very loving thing. She put me up for adoption. And yes, as you mentioned, my aunt and uncle, her sister, adopted me. So I went from Hollywood, California to Long Beach, California. And now I'm living with Bob and Pat Albin. Bob Albin is a career military officer, highly decorated, full-on military type of guy. Pat was a homemaker, a professional homemaker. That's what they were back then. So my life, by the time I was 5 years old, for the first 6 years was spectacular. I mean, we went camping all the time. It was wonderful, an amazing, amazing childhood. And then, as you said, when I was 11 years old, the first day of summer, 1964, they set me down that first day, and Mom came in and got me. She said, "David, come in the kitchen. Your dad and I need to speak with you." And they set me down, and my mom, with tears in her eyes, put her hand on my hand. And she said, "David, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents." What? Well, how can an 11-year-old kid process that? They can't.
Exactly.
Right? That's like going outside and you see a blue sky and they go, "Well, the sky's not really blue." Well, it looks pretty blue to me. Right? I mean, they look like my parents to me. That's what I called them. That's what everybody else called them. It's funny because my dad, Bob, people said all the time, "You look just like your dad. You look just like your father." And now they're telling, right? They did, absolutely did. And so now all of a sudden I'm being told they're not my parents. So pretty confusing. Needless to say, shortly after they told me this, they both started drinking. They swore off drinking when they adopted me at 5. 6 years later, they both started. Things got ugly real fast. So my life took a really hard right-hand turn, if you will. And, I get asked, do you think they started drinking because they told you that? I go, I don't know. We had just come out of the Bay of Pigs, right? A lot of people in the UK aren't going to know what that is. But John F. Kennedy, the president, in November 63, had been assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The Russians had put a bunch of missiles in Cuba and was setting up to attack the United States. It was called the Bay of Pigs. And so, my dad was working in the Pentagon, military officer, so he had access to a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. And so there was probably a lot of pressure with that. I don't know. This bottom line is they both started drinking. Well, they went to the store one day and left me home, which, you did that all the time in America back in the 60s. It was not unheard of at all. In fact, it was pretty common. And so when they left, I knew where the booze was. They were hiding it in plain sight. And I wanted to know what the hell this stuff was. And so I went over to the cabinet. I brought it out. It was a bottle of brandy. And I took a coffee cup, Kay, and I poured it half full. And boom, I downed it. Horrible stuff. However,
wait, how old were you at this point?
I was 11.
Oh my goodness.
I was 11 years old. And so it was like pouring rocket fuel in me. I never had a chance. I mean, literally, I believe that I was an alcoholic right on the spot, because from that moment, alcohol had me around the throat.
Wow.
And it never let go.
Okay.
Until, yeah.
Dave, I've got to ask you, right, a couple of questions already. Like, first of all, why do you think your aunt and uncle told you at the age of 11?
I don't know. I guess, who knows? Maybe they thought it was time. Maybe they felt guilty. Maybe they thought it was a loving act. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I've been asked many, many times, and I don't know. They just did. That's all I know.
And so how did you react as soon as they told you this? Like, did you even believe them, or you think they were joking around?
Well, I didn't think they were joking, but again, how do you process that at 11 years old? I didn't. All I knew is that it didn't make any sense to me, and my life changed. Because now I'm walking around going, well, okay. And what's interesting is because Mom goes, "And by the way, your Aunt Dean." And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, that's your biological mother. She gave birth to you." And I remember thinking, I don't even like her.
Oh,
no. Right? And here's why. Let me explain why, so that everybody's clear. She was always touching me. Anytime she was around me, she wanted to sit by me. She wanted to hold me. She wanted to kiss me. She wanted to cuddle me. Well, duh. I was her son. But I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I just thought, here's my aunt that won't leave me alone, if you will. By the way, I want to be very clear. She never, ever touched me inappropriately. It was always appropriately. You know what I mean? She was always very loving, very kind. She was always very excited to be around me. Well, I get that. I was her son. Why wouldn't I be, right?
Right.
So that was confusing too, right? As well. Because now I'm trying to, Bob and Pat are my mom. They're my dad. And all of a sudden they're not.
Yeah.
So after the alcohol, things started getting bad. Bob started drinking all the time. He was violent. He was not a nice human being when he was drinking. Pat was not so bad. She was never violent to me, but they would get in violent confrontations and fighting and all that. And I didn't want to be in the house. So I would leave. And by the time I was a junior in high school, things were pretty bad. And then, the school called me in the principal's office one day and said, Albin, you're out. We're kicking you out of school. So I got booted in 11th grade, my junior year.
But
Now,
how
I
old
didn't,
were
I was, how old am I then? I'm 17 roughly,
you then? Okay.
right?
Okay.
And I didn't care because
Yeah.
I didn't think that anything that I was learning in high school was going to make me any money anyway. I
Oh.
already had an entrepreneurial spirit that lived inside of me, right? Because when I was young, 10 years old, 11, Pat used to grow a bunch of beautiful flowers in the backyard. And it was a huge, area that she grew all these flowers, thousands of flowers. And she would cut them, and she'd cut them at an angle, not at the bottom. She cut them at an angle to open up the surface space to get water into the flower. And then she knew how to put them together. She made these bouquets that were gorgeous. And then she would put them in a bucket, and then she would pour a little bit of 7-Up in the water. And I don't know what it is. I guess it's the sugar. I'm not really sure. But man, that flower will last 3-4 times longer than it normally would.
No way. I'm gonna
So,
so try that trick.
oh, it'll work. Oh yeah, it works, guaranteed.
Wow.
So I'm out on the street corner selling them, and I'm negotiating with adults at 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, right? And then I got a paper route. And when you're a paper route in America, what you would do is you had to go to a spot. The paper company would drop the papers off. A truck would come and drop them off. You had to cut open the bundles. You had to fold the papers. You had to put a rubber band around them. You had to load them in your saddlebags. You had to put them on your bicycle, and then you had to go and deliver them. Right? You threw them up on the people's porch. Then you had to collect all the money. So you were a business person. You were an entrepreneur if you had a paper route, no doubt about it. Now, I also lived across the street from a golf course. So I would take my bicycle and I'd ride over to the golf course and I'd ride around the perimeter. And guess what I would find?
What?
Golf balls, lots of them, right? Because golfers hit them over the fence. And so
Right.
I'd go get those golf balls, I'd collect them. I'd go back to the pro shop at the golf course, and they throw the boxes. If the new balls came in, they're selling in the clubhouse, in the pro shop. And I'd take those boxes, I'd go clean the balls, I'd go back into the parking lot, and I'd sell the balls in the parking lot back to the golfers.
Wow.
So this is all at a very young age, right? So my belief system, my mindset at a young age was there's lots of money out there, go get it, go find it. And
Wow.
so that's where my entrepreneurial spirit has always come from. It's what's got me to where I am today.
That is amazing. But I have to ask you, what kept you going, right? And being creative and coming up with things like, oh, those golf balls, I can resell them again. Like, where did that all come from?
I don't, just it was like it was opportunity right in front of me. We
Oh,
used to ride our bikes over. There was a big park right next to the golf course, and we could go out there. And I remember finding golf balls, and I went, "These things sell for $1.25 in the clubhouse." So I
right.
knew it was money,
Yeah.
right? I just had to figure out how to market them or sell them back, to the golfers in the golf, that were in the parking lot. Every
Wow.
once in a while, the pro that ran the pro shop, the golf store would come out, and we were selling balls in the car
Oh.
in the parking lot. He'd run us off, and we'd always come back. I mean, we were on bicycles, so they could never catch us, right? In fact, they ended up hiring us.
Stop.
He did. He hired us. We literally I ended up working for the golf course. So I drove the cart that would the driving range that picked up all the balls and
Yeah.
would bring them in. And there was a machine that painted the little red stripes on them, and I
Right.
painted those. And when a golf cart would break down, I'd take another golf cart, go out there and pick it up. So they hired us for
Wow.
like $2 an hour, $1.75 maybe, something like that, $1.65. Yeah, so he couldn't beat us, so he decided to hire us.
That is a
um,
wow,
yeah,
wow, wow. So the transition, and again, you saw opportunities. Not many people see opportunities in front of them, but you found them very, very easily, right? And so,
I did.
what would you say? Because most of our audience are business owners, right? They're all
Okay.
looking to monetize, they're looking to build a business, they're looking to get sales, that, and a lot of them are struggling. They can't see the opportunities that are in front of them. And we all say this and we've heard it, opportunities everywhere,
Everywhere.
right? So,
Absolutely.
how do you go from being blindsided and not seeing the opportunities to actually opening your eyes?
Maybe that's part of it. Maybe because my home life was so wonderful, then turned bad, that I was looking for another way to find achievement or fulfillment
Mm.
outside of the home. One of my best friend's dad lived 2 doors down, and he was an engineer mechanic. He could fix and build anything. And I used to walk by his house, and I could see in the backyard, Walt was always in the back there tinkering with something. And he'd see me, he'd say, "Hey, come here. I need to show you something." And he knew what was going on. He knew my parents were drinking and there was a lot going on in my house. And he'd go, "Hey, hand me that screwdriver." Or, "You know what that is right there? That's a crescent wrench. That's a pair of pliers. That's a pair of channel locks. So, he was just like, he knew. And so it was his way of showing me that he cared.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And I'll never forget Walt Pasco for that. He was and then my best friend, Carl Whitaker, his dad, Carl Jr., all the dads were pretty good to me. A lot of the mothers were really good to me because they knew what was going on at home. So I got a lot of love and a lot of support from people that I grew up, on the street.
Now,
So, yeah.
you've built this empire of yours, right? Do you still keep in contact with all those people that knew you back then, right? Were helping you out however they best they could, and now they see you as this business owner doing amazing things.
Well, I grew up on a street. We had a lot of kids, a
Mm.
lot. There must have been 40 or 50 of us. And
Wow.
so I've stayed in touch with most of those. There was a group of us that were really, really close. We've all stayed very close. We grew up on a street in Long Beach, California called Belize Street. Well, we even have our own Facebook page. So yes, we stay in touch there. Um, I was in the wedding of many of the guys that got married that I grew up with. And so, yes, we've stayed very, very close. Most of our parents, though, have passed at this point. So
Ah,
they're gone. But, because I'm going to be, I turned 69 this year. So our parents have,
oh, wow.
most of them have been gone for a while.
Wow. So,
Um,
did they ever say to you, how the hell did you do this?
um, it was a culmination of a lot of things. Okay. It was joining Alcoholics Anonymous. That was a big part of my life. That was a big part of me realizing that I could stop drinking and stop doing drugs and stop destroying my life. So that opened up the door. In fact, when I got sober on June 8th of 1988, that's what opened the door to the personal development industry because I had insomnia. And
Oh,
so I was up late at night all the time. And one morning, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm up and there he is, the man himself, Mr. Infomercial, a young Tony Robbins, in 1988, selling personal power, a 30-day program for total success, he called it. And when I was watching that infomercial, there was two things that got me. One, he said, "We'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure." And that really resonated with me because I was using alcohol and drugs for those two purposes. I was trying to get some pleasure and I was trying to avoid pain. And of course, eventually you don't get either one when you're
mm.
drinking and drugging. And then the other thing that got me, and it's funny because I didn't even really like Tony when I first met him. I thought he was obnoxious. He's all motivated and, get this guy away from me because I wasn't motivated.
Right.
And here's what he said. He said, "We'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure." And then he also said, the two driving forces in our life is we're motivated. We make decisions based on inspiration or desperation. And I remember going, okay, he's talking to me directly because,
Wow.
I was desperate. So I bought his program Came on these little white things called cassette tapes.
I remember them. I still remember
You
them.
remember them? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm dating myself here, which is okay. And so I plugged it in and did what the man taught me to do, Kay, and it worked. It absolutely worked. And I was getting results. I started losing weight. I started working out. I started my own business. I was in a really bad marriage and I needed to start planning my exit strategy for that. Yeah, there was a lot going on. Well, one of my buddies in AA saw that I was making these changes. He's like, man, what's going on with you?
Right.
You know, you're really motivated. You're all inspiring and all that. He goes, what's going on with you? And I go, well, I've been listening to this guy named Tony Robbins. He goes, oh, I know who Tony Robbins is. I bought his book, but I never read it. And I go, okay, well, it would help if you read it there, bro. And I said, hey, man, I've got my program. If you want to borrow it, I'll loan it to you if you promise me that you'll go through it. Right. And he said, oh, absolutely. So I did. I loaned it to him and he did the same thing. Well, that's happening in what, 1988, 1989, right as I got sober, right? And so 7 years later, 1995, Dan calls me on the phone and says, hey, Dave, did you know that Tony Robbins is coming to town? Ooh. I'm like, no, man, I had no idea. He goes, oh, man, come on. We got to go. You got me into this. You got to go with me. And I'm like, dude, I'll go. Absolutely. He goes, oh, fantastic. He goes, let me call you back. I'll make all the arrangements. Okay. Calls me back an hour later. He goes, done. Wow. We pick up the tickets at will call. Here's what they said to do. Number one, bring snacks because you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. Well, you've been, Tony, right? What an understatement that is, right?
Yes.
Bring water. You need to hydrate. Keep yourself hydrated throughout the entire 4-day event. Bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out. I said, Dan, how much was the ticket? He said $700. $700 in 1995? What's that like today? 7.3 million? I mean, what? So I'm like, Dan, don't $700. Don't worry. I'll play full out. As he's getting ready to get off the phone, right? He goes, oh, by the way, I left out the most important part. I almost forgot to tell you. We're going to be doing a fire walk. I remember thinking, oh, hell no. No. This is all going through my head, by the way. I'm not saying anything to Dan because I don't want to say anything, right? I'm just going, oh, no, we ain't doing that. And you know what's funny, Kate? I didn't even know what a firewalk was, but I'm saying no to it. And the reason I'm saying no to it is because fear was controlling my life. Fear controls all of our lives. And that's the thing we all need to get under wraps because the fears we don't overcome become our limits. It's that simple because what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. It's not going to happen. So I'm saying no out of fear, right? But I don't let Dan know that. I'm like, yeah, okay, great, Dan. See you then. Bye. And then I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. Well, the day comes. The big day comes. We get to the event. Tony takes the stage at like 2:00 in the afternoon. The next thing I know, it's after midnight.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I've been in a room for 10 hours with Tony Robbins. Well, you know the thing about bring snacks or you'll starve to death. Well, we learned that. Well, the next thing I know, Tony goes, take your shoes off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, pal. I know where you're going with that. You're not tricking me. Well, the next thing I know, I'm in a room with 3,500 people, by the way. And guess what they're doing? They're taking their shoes off. And I'm like, oh no, people, no, don't go towards the light. You're falling for it. Don't do it. So now I've got a dilemma. What am I going to do? Because if I don't take my shoes off, what he's doing, he's preparing you to go outside in this big parking lot and do a firewalk for 3,500 people. So I'm like, okay, just calm down. Everything's cool. Take your shoes off. And when you get out there, just go to the back and hide. No one is going to know. No. They're not going to. Who's going to know? No one's going to know, right?
Uh-oh.
Well, yeah, I'm going to know, but that's another story. So it gets worse though. Because as he gets you going out there, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting.
Right.
So they're like, yes. 3,500 people clapping and chanting as you're walking out to the firewalk. It gets worse. When you get out there, Tony's got African drummers.
Oh.
dun, 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 and people clapping. What a dog and pony show, Kay. It's so intense. It's unbelievable.
It is. It is.
Well,
Now you went to the one in the US. I went to the one in the UK, right?
right, right.
Now, you had a very different perspective to the one that I had because I couldn't wait to do the fire walk, but not because of the reasons that most people think. Right? I already told you this, right?
Right.
It was pouring down, it was freezing, I was barefoot, I couldn't feel my feet, it was frozen. I couldn't wait to get warmed up, right? I wanted
Right.
my feet to be warm. So I couldn't
Understood.
wait to get on the fire walk. But then, all right, what happened to you after that then?
All right. So you get out there and there's a giant fire. It's been burning all day. It's a huge fire. It's
Yes.
probably 30 feet wide, 70 feet long. And they stoke it with wood all day long. And at
Right.
the end of the night, 10 hours later, it renders. So it's this big, giant, beautiful blue pile of coals. They're gorgeous. Well, how do you walk by 3,500 people? You take wheelbarrows over to that fire. You load the wheelbarrows full of coals. You bring a wheelbarrow back in between two lanes of sod, of grass. They call it a fire lane, probably 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. And they just take a flathead shovel and they sprinkle those coals across that grass, that fire lane. That's what you walk on. Well, I'm having none of it. Where am I? I'm in the back. I'm hiding out. Well, now here's the thing. Tony Robbins knows that the firewalk experience is probably the most life-changing paradigm shift experience on earth. And he knows if you don't do it, it's not going to create the paradigm shift.
Right.
You're going to miss out. And so he doesn't want you to not do that. So what's he do? He trains people to come find you. Oh, yeah. You betcha. Because I'm back there hiding out, thinking everything's cool. I've gotten around this thing. I don't have to do it. And all of a sudden, here comes this guy. And he makes eye contact with me. Tony must train him. Hey, when you make eye contact with those people, don't take your eyes off them. It's because he's staring at me. And he gets probably 20 feet from me. Okay. And all of a sudden, he looks at me like funny, like there's something wrong with me. Right. And he goes, "Are you okay?"
Oh.
And I'm like, and when we're not okay, what do we say? We lie. Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. Nothing to see here, pal. Move along. And he goes, good. He says, "Hey, man, are you going to walk tonight?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." And I said it in a way that was like, "Back off, man."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, man." He goes, "Hey, that's cool. There's no problem there. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. But let me ask you a question." Now, the question he's ready to answer me, this is a stranger, bear in mind. I don't know who this guy is today, but without his question, you and I aren't here right now.
Wow.
And the question was, wouldn't you at least like to watch?
Oh.
And I'm thinking, well, yeah, sure. That'll be entertaining. Let's do that. Let's watch these people burn their feet off. And he said, "Well, hey, man, you can't see anything from way back here. I'm 100 yards away." He's right. I can't see anything. I got 3,500 people in front of me. I can't see anything. I can hear them chanting. They're clapping. The drums are going. They're already firewalking. They're screaming and yelling and celebrating already. I mean, it's a dog and pony show unlike anything I've ever seen or witnessed in my life. I've never seen anything like it other than a Tony Robbins seminar. And so all right, fine. So I get in line. And so I'm kind of walking along. And all of a sudden, this guy comes up to me and he whispers in my ear. And he said, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew, this guy just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, what was that? Who was that? What was that about? Right. So that's kind of, and again, just disappeared. And so I'm walking along. And I got 1,000 people in front of me. I can't see anything yet, but I get to an angle and I can actually see it. And they're doing it, Kay. Everybody is. Every race, every creed, every color, every age, they are walking on fire. And my brain is going, why are they doing that? What metaphorically here, what's going on? What the hell would they do that for? Right? Because I have no references. I'm still in no mode, right?
Right.
And I'm watching and it's kind of like, you drive by a car accident and you're not supposed to look at it, right? You can't take your eyes off it. Well, that's kind of what's going on. I'm mesmerized. I'm in a trance. I'm staring at these people. And all of a sudden, boom, guess where I am?
Ooh.
I'm at the front of the line, standing right there. And I look down and I can see the coals on that fire lane, right? And they sprinkle them on there and they're bright red. And there's a wheelbarrow there. I can feel the heat coming off. And I think my heart's going to bounce and just vibrate out of my chest. I'm scared to death. And so there's a trainer standing right there. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up. Oh, okay. I get my eyes up. I'm in a room for 10 hours with Tony Robbins. And guess what he taught me to do?
Get
Keep your eyes
up.
up, dummy. Oh, apparently I'm a slow learner. So now my eyes are up, right? And the trainer goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell. He knew. He definitely knew I was not in a peak state. So what did he do? He screamed at me, stronger. Well, I'm mad now. I threw my hands in the air and I screamed yes as loud as I could. And he goes, go, go, go. Well, remember the guy that came up? He said, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I went. I took off. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I guarantee you. You are not going to stop on that fire lane. It's not going to happen. Well, Tony positions two people at the end of the fire lane. They lock arms and they catch you. Right. They're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. So now I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating. And all of a sudden it dawns on me. I've burnt myself really bad.
Oh, no.
Really bad. And I look at my foot and it's dirty, but there's no burns. Oh, it's my other foot. I look at it. Yeah, it's dirty. There's no burns. I just walked across coals that are 1,000 degrees. I was successful at it, and I don't have a clue how I did it. None. Ever done that? You do something really, really cool that you'd never in a million years believe you could do, and all of a sudden you're like, yep, that was me. That's this guy right here. I did that, right?
Right.
So now you're in the celebration lane, right? So you're there with a couple thousand people and they're all celebrating. They're jumping up and down, your self-worth, your self-confidence, your self-belief, your frequency has been raised. And you're like, okay, I can do anything right now in this moment. Right. You know, where's the bus? Let's go to Everest. I mean, what's next, right? Well, here's where it gets super interesting. The next day, remember, this is a 4-day event. Mm-hmm. That was day one. That was the night of day one. And now it's day two. So now you got 3,500 people who, by the way, all showed up on time. People weren't late. It was very interesting. And so we're standing in the foyer getting ready to go into the venue. And Kay, I've never seen or witnessed anything like it in my life. It was absolutely beautiful. It was gorgeous. Wow. Because people were getting along humanistically the way we're supposed to.
Right.
They're laughing. They're crying. They're hugging. They're connecting. They're talking about the firewalk. They're talking about their fears. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing to be part of. And again, all of our self-worth had been raised. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, was this created because we drank the Kool-Aid last night? Right? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Wow. Well, later on in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers, Ed Macy, super, super great guy. Him and his wife, Mary, both trainers back then for Tony. And we're just talking. We're talking about stuff. And I go, man, it must be so awesome to be in this environment on a regular basis. It's so positive and energetic. He goes, oh, yeah, I get to do this 8-10 times a year. And he goes, as a matter of fact, he said, you see all those people over there with those black shirts and the pink writing on the back? Yeah. He goes, they're volunteers, dude. They're just like you. They came to an event, fell in love with it, and then they've come back to volunteer their time. Wow. He said, so when you get home, call Robbins Research and ask them to send you a volunteer crew application. And who knows? Well, I did. They sent it to me. I filled it out. I sent it back. And it was like 9 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Amazing.
Will color me happy. My foot was in the door. There it is.
Yeah.
And so
I gotta ask you, Dave. I know that there's still so much to the story, right? But this is where the Firewalker Ventures, your business, Your
Yes.
empire now comes from that experience,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Firewalk's adventures. And is it very similar to what Tony Robbins does, or how does this help your clients?
Well, it goes back to what, we say all the time, and that is what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you.
Mm,
Firewalking is literally one of the most life-changing experiences on earth. Prove me wrong. You're not going to. Why? Because it's a 1,000-year-old ritual. It's a
right.
rite of passage. Go talk to the Tahitians, the people of India, the
Yeah.
the the people of Portugal, the Spaniards, the Hawaiians, the Polynesians, the Native American Indians, the Indo-Europeans. They used to use the firewalk before the men would go into battle. So it's a very, very powerful experience. So once I got to Tony's event and I spent a lot of time there, they ended up hiring me as a subcontractor. And so because I had a farm and I knew how to use tools and things like this, and I had a security background and a military background, they also put me on the security detail, which is where I started taking care of Tony's celebrities. So that all happened back in 95, 96. In 2003, Tony offered me the captain's position. And he offered for my family, because I was homeschooling them, to pay for them to go on the road.
No
So
way.
now I'm in, right? So that happened in 2003. I took over all of Tony's firewalks globally. My first event with my family with that was in Sydney, Australia, right? So now my kids and my wife are on the road with me. I mean, it was magical.
Yeah.
2003, we came to London. We came to the Excel Center. Woo, woo, woo. Came to the Excel Center and we set the world record. That's where we firewalked 12,300 people. Now, I want to be clear about something. Guinness Book of World Record was not there, but I'm 99.9999% sure that 12,300 people is the largest firewalk in the world ever. Unless, you, of course, the only thing that's ever come close is another Tony Robbins seminar.
Right.
Right? Well, so to get to your answer of your question, so in 2014, I'm driving down the road, my phone rings, and it's Google. What? I mean, doesn't Google call people all the time and ask them to come work for them?
Like, yeah, how did they find you? Like, how'd you
Well,
know?
that's funny. That I actually I'm there. I so said, how did you guys find me? Did you Google me? Right. So anyway, they're like, hey, are you the Dave Albin? There's a firewalk for Tony Robbins. Yeah, what can I do for you? They said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. And I
Wow.
went, okay, well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? I said, well, we have 148 executives that are going to graduate, and we'd like to anchor it in. I mean, Google knows. They knew that they wanted to anchor in this curriculum that the executives went through was 9 months long. It was pretty intense. So they wanted to do the graduation, have a really nice lunch, and then they wanted to anchor it in with an experience like a firewalk. They know. And so I'm like, well, guys, here's the bad news. I can't do a firewalk in the middle of the day that you're asking me to do. I can do it in the evening. They said, well, logistically, that really won't work because they're going to graduate. They want to eat lunch. Then we want to do the experience. Then we want to let them have a couple of beers. And I go, well, here's what we could do. We could do a glass walk. They're like, what? I go, yeah, we could do a glass walk. They're like, walk on broken glass? Yep. And they're like, ooh, tell us about that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so we did. I ended up doing 2 glass walks for Google. And that's really when Firewalk Productions was born, Kay, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because right after Google, I went to NASA. Then I went to Notre Dame. Then I went to Virginia Tech. Then I went to Remax and Heineken and Chick-fil-A and YMCA and the EO organization and high schools. And I mean, my career just exploded.
That is awesome. Oh my goodness.
No pun intended, but we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
Wow. Okay, so I've gotta ask you another question right now.
Of course.
It seems like business came really easy to you, right? And we kind of spoke about this off camera. It came very easy, or it seemed like it did, right? There's so many business owners out there that struggle with getting their name out there, working with big brands like you have, right? That's a lot of business owners' dreams. Making those sales, getting those clients. Like, how did you do this? How did you put yourself out there? Or did it all stem from being the captain with Tony Robbins' company?
I think it encompassed a few things. Number one, I'm not afraid of the word no.
Ah,
Because when I was a kid, and I had my paper route, I had to go knock on doors. And so I was okay with that. And I forget who said it. It might have been Tommy Hopkins who said, every time you get a no, what you do is you find out, you try to get an idea, how many no's does it take before you get a yes? And
ah,
then how much do you make off the product that you sell? And they said, so take that number of, between no's and yes and divide it into how much you make. And then every time you get a no, you tell them, thank you for the $35, right?
huh.
Because that's what, every time somebody says no, you're making $35
Interesting.
metaphorically, right?
Right.
And so I was good with that. I knew I'd get to a yes. And if you're a problem solver, if you can help another human being solve a problem in their life, or you have a product or a service that they need and want, then guess what? You're there. What else do you need to know? I don't play the game. I don't play this game in my head. I don't negotiate with myself. I don't do that. I know that if I go out and pound on doors or I go talk to some people,
Yeah.
eventually I'm going to get a yes. You ask enough girls to dance, eventually one of them's going to say yes. I mean, so it's kind of the
It,
same mindset.
it's really funny, Dave. You remind me a lot of my mentor, right? Who's based in the States, right? Same personality, go getter, like don't care for the no's because he knows he's gonna get a yes. Like you remind me so much of him for sure. And so all you did was like pound down these doors, go to these companies in the hope that one of them's gonna say yes eventually.
Yeah. Well, I knew that I already had a resume. Once Google contacted me, I knew, wait a
Right.
minute. If Google's contacting me, then what's going on? In
Well,
fact,
this,
I had a conversation with one of the gals at Google.
yeah.
She was one of the executives that was graduating. And she said, look, man, you can do what you want, but let me tell you something. There's a huge marketplace for you
Mm,
because you're a problem solver. Because when companies break down, you can fix it.
wow. Yeah.
Because I typically, companies, when they come to me, Kay, there's normally one of three reasons. One, there's a total breakdown. They're arguing about masks and vaccines and political platforms and blah, blah, blah. I mean, shut up already. When people argue like that within a company, production goes in the toilet. It just
Mm,
does. And if the CEO or the business owner doesn't fix it, you got a big problem because you're going to lose a lot of money when there's dissension between the troops. Come on, it's common knowledge. Now, the other time when somebody hires me is they're not good, but they're not bad. They're mediocre. They're hiring me to come, with a shot in the arm. Let's elevate them. And then the other time people hire me is when they're getting it on, man. They're really doing well.
yeah.
Business is good, and they want to elevate it to the next level. They come
Mm,
hire me. That works too. So the bottom line is that, I know this works because I was standing in a foyer with 3,500 people after that firewalk that night, and I saw it with my own eyes. And I've seen now, between Tony and I, we walked over hundreds of thousands of people. And so I see it. I look at the look on their face before, then they're standing there getting ready to do it. All the apprehension and the fear, and boom, they break through it. Then they get to the other end and they celebrate. So
right.
it's 4 seconds to change your life. It works, period. I know, I've seen it too many times. So here's something I did. I think you asked a while ago, did I change anything
Mm,
around when it comes to how I do things based on the way Tony did it? The answer is yes, absolutely. And what I did is I add the board break experience to the firewalk. So
ooh,
what we do with that, it's a normal martial arts move, right? Break a board. If you go to any dojo, if you go into martial arts, every time you graduate, you'll break a board with your hand, your elbow, your knee, your foot, whatever. And that's how you graduate into the belt system. So what we do is we take the board and we have the participant write something on front of the board they want to move towards. We have
ah,
them write something on back of the board that they need to move away from. And then I have them write anybody's name on the board that they're in conflict with. In other words,
ooh,
if forgiveness or reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. Stop carrying that around you. It's insane. It's bringing you down. And then to create the magic around the rite of passage part of the firewalk is we have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. So that creates a ancestral, tribal part of the whole system, of the process. So they break the board, we take them out, we circle them, we firewalk them, and then we bring them back and they add the board to the fire. And then there's one other thing I do out there. It's kind of a proprietary thing. I put them through a process so I get everybody's heart to calibrate. So everybody's heart starts beating at the same time. And once I get them there, and then they go back on Monday and they start working together, you have a completely different group of human beings because the fire fixed it. Fire doesn't care about masks. Fire doesn't care about vaccines. The fire doesn't care about whether you like or hate Donald Trump or Joe Biden. None of it. Fire doesn't care. It brings the warmth back to human beings' life.
Wow.
And so it's magical. So, and then with the glass break, or with the glass walk, we add what's called the arrow break, which is where you put an arrow here in the soft spot of your neck.
Yeah.
Put it up against the wall and you step through and break it. So we add those two experiences, which also makes both of them really powerful as well.
Wow.
So, and that's why we've done so well, because we know how to bring the company back together and get them to work in unison and get them to work as humans and treat each other as good, loving, kind human beings that want to work together and strive and be better.
Oh my goodness. Dave, your journey, your story, what you do for your clients is just wow, wow, wow. Oh my goodness, right? Now, I know at this point people are like, holy crap, how do I connect with Dave? Right? So where can they go if they want to connect with you, learn more about the firewalk?
I'm going to leave you the information. So, our website obviously is where our corporate clients and our clients find us. They go to our website, which is firewalkadventures.com. That's all one word, firewalkadventures.com, and everything's there. My calendar's there, our experiences, videos. I started the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy last year, and it's coming up again in October. And that's where people send their people to me, and I train them on how to do all this stuff, and then we send them back to their companies. And and these are, people send people from their HR department. I have entrepreneurs, business owners, trainers, all kinds of people that come, want to learn all of this. And then we send them back home, and then we support them from that standpoint so they can go home and facilitate firewalks and board breaks and glass walks and arrow breaks and all that stuff, storytelling, all of that. Wow. So we keep that real small, very intimate. We're sold out this year. We bring in 9 people. So the next event will be October. We think it's going to be October 2024, unless we decide to do one in April. We haven't made that decision yet, so it depends on what happens here in October. So that's there. They can look at all that, and then my Facebook page. Come be friends. Come to our Facebook page, Firewalk Adventures. You can see what's going on a daily basis and a weekly basis, monthly basis, and we'll connect and we'll share. Here's what I believe. You help enough people get what they want in life, okay?
Yeah.
You always get what you want. Because here's what I know. I believe the 2 most important times of someone's life is the moment they're born and the moment they figure out why. And like one of my mentors said to me, he said, Dave, you know what? Every human being has 2 lives. And the second one starts when we realize we have only one.
There you go. Wow. So many golden nuggets in such a short amount of time. Dave, I'm blown away, and I know audience are going to be blown away as well. But this was so epic. I'm so looking forward to, sharing your story with everybody else. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having me on your show, and come to the US, come see us. We'd love to hang out and, maybe do a firewalk in a way that's a little different than you did last time.
Right, yes, not so cold. Awesome. I will take you up on the offer, Dave, for sure. Thank you once again.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Make Your Mark podcast at www.makeyourmarkpodcast.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get this and every other episode that comes out. We have lots of great stuff coming, so make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And thank you in advance for all the reviews and comments. I appreciate it so much, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.